A wealthy man mocked a cleaner in a meeting and everyone laughed, but the next day she left them all speechless. Monday morning dawned grey over New York, as if the sky was presaging what was to come. Amanda Jones pushed her cleaning cart down the hallways of the 15th floor of the commercial building in Midtown, where the headquarters of Serrano and Associates was located. At 29, she had perfected the art of being invisible, silent movements, a lowered gaze, a grey uniform that made her disappear against the walls. It was 7:30 a.m. when she entered the main conference room, the sanctuary of the executives. The atmosphere breathed power, a solid mahogany table, Italian leather chairs, a panoramic view of the city. Amanda began to clean methodically, as she had done for exactly 6 months and 3 days. Each movement calculated, each gesture studied. At 8:15, voices echoed down the hallway. Brian Serrano, the company's CEO, entered laughing heartily, followed by his cronies. Marcia Phillips, the CFO, with her loud red blazer. Edward Clark, the marketing director, sporting a watch that cost more than many employees' annual salary. And Richard Baker, the human resources director, always with that fake smile that fooled no one. "Good morning, team," Brian dropped into the head chair. "We have a lot to discuss about the Petrolina company contract." Amanda continued cleaning, now more slowly. The Petrolina contract was worth $12 million. She knew this because she had photographed the documents the week before. "Hey, you!" Brian's voice cut through the air like a knife. Amanda looked up slowly, feigning surprise. "Yes, you, the cleaner. Can you clean somewhere else now? We're going to discuss important matters." "Of course, sir." Amanda bowed her head submissively. "I'm just finishing up here." Edward laughed, a harsh, unpleasant sound. "Important matters," as if she'd understand anything we're saying. "True." Marcia adjusted her glasses, looking at Amanda as if she were an insect. "People like her live in a bubble completely separate from our reality. $1 million numbers, international contracts. It's like talking Chinese to a child." Richard shook his head with feigned pity. "Poor thing, she probably can't even add correctly. Did she even finish high school?" Brian impatiently snapped his fingers. "Cleaner, are you deaf? I told you to get out of here." Amanda gathered her materials with deliberately slow movements, absorbing every word, every tone of contempt. Inside, she mentally noted, Brian Serrano, 8:17 a.m., Monday. Humiliating treatment in front of subordinates. Witnesses, Marcia, Edward, Richard. "I'm sorry, sir, I sometimes don't understand things very quickly." She made sure to sound embarrassed, almost childlike. "Obviously," Edward sighed exaggeratedly. "That's why you work with MOPS and we work with multi-million-dollar contracts. Everyone in their place, right?" Marcia laughed maliciously. "Imagine if she knew we were talking about an amount she wouldn't earn even working 10 lifetimes. 10 lifetimes? Richard pretended to calculate. "I think not even 20. With that cleaner's salary—" Brian slammed the table. "Stop wasting time. Cleaner, get out. Now." Amanda bowed in an exaggerated curtsy. "Yes, sir, excuse me." She walked slowly toward the door, carrying the weight of the staged humiliation on her hunched shoulders. At the door, she paused. She turned slightly as if to say something, but just shook her head and left. Behind her, the executive's laughter echoed down the hallway. Outside, Amanda leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. 6 months of preparation, 6 months of being treated like human furniture, 6 months of collecting evidence that had brought down smaller empires. She smiled, a smile none of them had ever seen. Friday couldn't come soon enough. Saarstownen, 8 months earlier, Amanda parked her Honda Civic in front of the New York Athletic Club on Central Park South. The March sun was gilding the treetops, but the expression of John Serrano, sitting alone at a restaurant table, was as gloomy as a winter storm. At 68, John was a man who had built an empire from scratch. He founded Serrano and Associates 30 years earlier, with only a phone and a lot of determination. Now he watched Amanda approach with the hope of someone clinging to a life raft. "Amanda, thanks for coming." His voice carried decades of weariness. "I know you must be wondering why a man of my caliber sought you out specifically." Amanda sat down, studying the businessman's weathered face. She knew him by reputation, a self-made man, respected in the New York business world. "Mr. John, you sounded desperate on the phone. What's going on?" John sighed heavily, looking at his calloused hands. "My son is destroying everything I built." His voice trembled slightly. "Brian took over 3 years ago when I had my heart attack. I thought it was time to pass the torch, you know. He had the career, the MBA, But he has no character, neither he nor the executives he brought with him. John opened a folder on the table. Look at these numbers. Amanda analyzed the financial reports. Even at first glance, the numbers were alarming. Mr. John, this is ruined. Yes, I know. He ran a hand through his grey hair. In 3 years, Brian has managed to ruin a company that took me 3 decades to build. Losses of $8 million last year. Major clients cancelling contracts, employees resigning. Amanda continued to study the documents. These reports there's something strange here. The numbers don't add up. That's just what I've been able to discover officially. I'm sure there's a lot more under the table. John leaned forward. Amanda, you have a reputation for being an exceptional consultant. Your turnaround cases are legendary. Metropolitan Steel, Atlantic Transport, Del Valle Garments. Mr. John, from what I see here, your company needs much more than consulting. It needs emergency surgery. And that's why I want to sell it to you. Amanda almost choked on her coffee. Excuse me? John smiled for the first time in the conversation. I've investigated you thoroughly. At 29, you've already saved 17 struggling companies. Your net worth allows you to buy Serrano and Associates for the price I'm going to ask. What price? $100,000. The silence stretched for long seconds. Amanda knew the company, even in crisis, was worth at least $15 million in assets. Why so little? Because it's not about the money. It's about justice. John clenched his hands into fists. I want my son, and those parasites he brought to pay for what they did. I want the honest employees to be valued. I want my name to be cleared. Amanda fell silent, processing the proposal. And what would be my freedom of action? Total. One single condition. You need to get to know the company from the inside before you make any changes. You need to understand the toxic culture that has set in there. How long? 6 months at a minimum. I want you to see with your own eyes how they treat the employees, how they act when they think no one is watching. Amanda slowly smiled. An idea was forming in her mind. Mr. John, what if I told you I have a way to get to know your company that your executives would never suspect? How so? What if I worked there as a cleaner for 6 months? John's eyes widened. You would work as a cleaner? Think about it. Who notices a cleaner? Who watches what they say in front of her? Who hides documents when she's cleaning? Amanda leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. I'd be invisible. I could see everything, hear everything, document everything. But you have an MBA, you're a respected businesswoman. Precisely why it would work. No one would suspect. Amanda extended her hand. I accept your proposal, Mr. John, but I will do more than save your company. I will transform it into an example of what an organization can be when competence and character go hand in hand. John shook her hand, and for the first time in months, he smiled for real. Tuasin, 6 months earlier, Amanda looked at herself in the bathroom mirror of her penthouse on Central Park West. The reflection looking back at her was unrecognizable. Dark brown hair, previously blonde, cut in simple layers, prescription glasses she didn't need, no makeup, a hunched posture that hid her natural confidence. Perfect, she murmured to herself, practicing the low, submissive voice she had developed in recent weeks. On the bed was the uniform she would wear for the next 6 months. Faded cloth pants, a grey polo shirt with the logo of the outsourced cleaning company, worn white sneakers she had bought at a thrift store. Next to it, a fake ID card, not exactly fake, but with a slightly different name. Amanda Jones, without the Carmen, without the family name that might arouse suspicion in the New York business world. The phone rang. John Serrano. Amanda, all set for tomorrow? All set. The documentation is perfect. The cleaning company's HR department is aware of the social experiment I'm doing for my doctoral thesis. It was a convenient lie that would explain any unusual behavior. And you? Did you get everything on your end? Yes. Brian suspects nothing. I asked him to hire a new cleaner because the old one resigned, and he didn't even question it. You know how he is with people he considers inferior. I know. Amanda adjusted her glasses. Mr. John, are you sure you don't want to know the details as I discover them? No. The less I know, the more natural my reaction will be when you reveal everything. Just call me if there's a real emergency. Amanda hung up and went to her desk. There were 3 university degrees, business administration, a master's in business management, and a series of certifications in organizational consulting. On the wall, photos of her with CEOs of major companies in New York and other cities. She opened a file on the computer. Operation Dignity, Serrano and Associates. In the past 2 months, she had studied every employee of the company through social media, public records, and informal conversations with people in the sector. She knew their stories, their families, their struggles. There was also a file on each executive. Brian Serrano, 35, graduated in administration from NYU MBA from Columbia Business School. On paper, competent. In practice, according to the conversations John had mentioned, a despot who confused authority with authoritarianism. Marcia Phillips, 42, an accountant specializing in finance. History of 3 previous jobs from which she had left by mutual agreement, always a euphemism for negotiated terminations for cause. Edward Clark, 38, an advertiser, known in the market for creative campaigns, but also for inflated budgets and dubious relationships with suppliers. Richard Baker, 45, an organizational psychologist, ironically a specialist in workplace climate, who, according to the company's staff turnover rates, was doing a terrible job. Amanda closed the files and went to the dressing room. In the back, behind the designer suits and cocktail dresses, was a small suitcase with her cleaner clothes. Next to it, a tiny camera to be sewn into the uniform, a digital recorder smaller than a coin, and a basic smartphone where she had installed apps to discreetly document evidence. She picked up a simple notebook and wrote on the first page, Amanda Jones's Journal, Cleaner. On the following pages, she noted everything she knew about the company's routine, schedules, departments, names of key employees. The alarm clock read 10:30 p.m. In 8 hours, the most challenging transformation of her career would begin. It wasn't just about saving a company, but about proving that competence has no social class, gender, or appearance. It was about dignity. Amanda smiled as she remembered the words of her grandmother, who had raised 5 children working as a domestic helper. My granddaughter, never forget where you come from, and never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Tomorrow she would be underestimated, invisible, despised, but she would also be the best prepared Trojan horse in American business history. 6 months earlier, Amanda's first day as a cleaner began at 6 a.m. She woke up in her penthouse, but took a quick cold shower. She was psychologically preparing herself for the next 6 months. She put on the uniform that would make her disappear among the crowd of outsourced employees. At 6:45, she was at the entrance of the commercial building, showing her fake documents to the security guard. "First time here?" he asked, barely looking at her face. "Yes, sir." She kept her voice low, her shoulders hunched. "I'm a little nervous." "Relax. The people on the 15th floor barely notice you cleaning, folks. Just do your job quietly and no one will bother you." If he only knew, Amanda thought, heading to the elevator. The cleaning company supervisor, a man of 55 with grey hair and calloused hands, met her on the 15th floor. "Are you Amanda Jones?" "Yes, that's me, sir." "Great. I'm going to show you your area. You'll be in charge of the executive offices and the conference rooms. It's well, let's say, a more delicate job." "Why?" The supervisor lowered his voice. "The executives here aren't very, how can I put it, friendly to the cleaning staff. They treat us as if we're invisible. Sometimes they don't even respond when we say hello." Amanda pretended to be intimidated. "And what do I do if they say something to me?" "You don't do anything. You bow your head, apologize, and keep working. They like it when we humble ourselves a little." The bitterness in the supervisor's voice was palpable. During the first week, Amanda watched everything in silence. She arrived at 7 a.m., half an hour before the executives, and stayed until 6 p.m. She cleaned each room meticulously, but always with an attentive ear to conversations. On Tuesday, she witnessed Brian yelling at an accounting employee, Julia, about a $500 discrepancy in the reports. Amanda knew Julia was right. She had photographed the original documents the day before, but Brian didn't want to hear explanations. "You're paid not to make mistakes," he shouted, pounding his fists on the table. "If you can't do your job right, we can find someone who can." Julia left the room with tears in her eyes, walking past Amanda as if she were part of the furniture. At that moment, Amanda understood that she was not only treated as invisible, she had become the perfect witness to the company's abuses. On Wednesday, it was Edward's turn to humiliate the graphic designer, Carlos, in front of the entire marketing team. "This is junk. My 12-year-old nephew does better things with Photoshop." Amanda was cleaning a nearby table and saw Carlos clench his fists, holding back his rage. She later learned, through the supervisor, that Carlos had 15 years of experience and had already won national design awards. On Thursday, Richard fired 3 employees in a single day, claiming cost reduction. Coincidentally, on Friday, Amanda saw the new hires' ID cards. 2 were Richard's nephews, and 1 was Marsha's son. All were hired with salaries 40% higher than those of the dismissed employees. But it was on Friday that Amanda witnessed the scene that would completely change the course of her strategy. She was cleaning the women's restroom when she heard someone crying in one of the stalls. She waited patiently, and when the door opened, she saw a secretary, Christina, with red eyes. "I'm sorry," Christina murmured when she saw Amanda. "I didn't know anyone was in here." Amanda could have remained silent, keeping her facade, but something in the young woman's shattered expression made her act differently. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Christina looked at her in surprise. It was probably the first time a cleaner had ever spoken to her. I shouldn't be crying at work." "Everyone needs to cry sometimes." Amanda offered her a paper towel. "Do you want to talk? Sometimes it helps to talk to someone who no one notices exists." And so began Amanda's first real conversation in the last 6 months. Christina told her that Brian humiliated her daily, that she supported her elderly mother and couldn't leave the job, that she dreamed of finishing her business degree, but had neither the time nor the money. "You know what the worst part is?" Christina wiped her eyes. "I know I'm good at what I do. I put together the entire Petrolina presentation they're giving next week by myself, but he'll get all the credit." At that moment, Amanda made a decision that would change everything. It wasn't enough to document the executive's crimes. She needed to get to know the victims, to give names and faces to the people who had been crushed by that dream-crushing machine. "Christina," she said softly, "what if I told you that sometimes things change when you least expect them?" "How so?" Amanda smiled, a smile no one had seen since she started working there. "Sometimes, people who seem to have all the power find out they have none at all, and people who seem invisible, well, sometimes they're seeing everything." 3 months earlier, Amanda had become an efficient ghost in the hallways of Serrano and Associates. In 3 months, she had mapped not only the executive's crimes, but the entire network of complicity that sustained the corruption in the company. Her small apartment, in reality just a rented room in Queens as part of her facade, had been transformed into an operations center. On the walls, photographs, charts, and documents were connected by red threads, like in a detective movie. At the center of it all, 4 photos: Brian, Marsha, Edward, and Richard. The Amanda Jones Cleaner notebook now had 200 pages filled with tiny handwriting. Each page documented a crime, an abuse, a humiliation. But they weren't just numbers and facts. Amanda had given human faces to every injustice. Page 47. May 14th, Brian Serrano siphons $15,000 from the marketing account for a dinner with friends at the New York Athletic Club. Same day, Christina works until 10 p.m. Without overtime pay to finish the report, Brian will present as his own the next day. Page 73. May 28th, Edward Clark receives an $8,000 commission from the printing company, Quick Print, for an inflated contract. Same day, he fires the designer Carlos, claiming cost reduction. Carlos supports 3 children on his own. Page 129. June 15th, Marsha falsifies a financial report, hiding a real loss of $200,000. Same day, she denies a 3% raise requested by Julia from accounting, citing the company's financial difficulties. But the most impressive thing was the network of complicity that Amanda had discovered. The 4 executives not only committed individual crimes, but they covered for each other, creating a network of corruption that seemed impenetrable. Richard provided inside information about employees who threatened to expose irregularities. Marsha manipulated the numbers to hide Brian's diversions. Edward inflated contracts and split the extra profit. Brian used his authority to intimidate anyone who questioned the system, and they all treated honest employees as potential enemies. Amanda had documented 47 cases of workplace harassment, 23 episodes of embezzlement, 15 situations of nepotism and fraud, and 8 cases of sabotage against competent employees. But she had also documented something else: the silent resistance of the honest employees. Christina, who still didn't know Amanda's true identity, had become her most valuable source. In conversations in the restroom, the only place they could talk without being overheard, she revealed that several employees had formed an informal network of mutual protection. "We warn each other when one of the directors is in a bad mood," Christina said one Thursday. Julia from accounting always double-checks the numbers before sending any report because she knows they'll look for an error. Lucas, who works in internal auditing, keeps a copy of all the important documents at home. Why don't you report them? Amanda asked, feigning naivety. To whom? Richard controls HR. Marcia manipulates the finances. Edward has connections with the local media. And Brian, Christina sighed. Brian is the owner's son. Who's going to believe us? That conversation revealed to Amanda the true dimension of the problem. It wasn't just a few corrupt executives. It was a system designed to protect the guilty and silence the victims. That night, Amanda called Dr. Michael Jones, the most respected criminal lawyer in New York. He had been her classmate in college, and they had been friends for over 10 years. Michael, I need your help with an unusual case. How unusual? I'm going to bring down 4 executives all at once. I have evidence of dozens of crimes, but I need to make sure none of them escape. Amanda, what exactly are you talking about? Embezzlement, document forgery, systematic workplace harassment, conspiracy? Oh, and I want the operation to happen in a single morning. Everyone fired for cause, everyone criminally prosecuted with no possibility of negotiation. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for long seconds. Amanda, what on earth have you done? She smiled, alone in her small rented room, surrounded by the evidence that would change dozens of lives. Michael, have you ever heard of Serrano and Associates? Of course, a traditional New York company. Why? Because next Friday, it will have new owners and new management, and you'll be the lawyer who makes sure justice is served. 1 week before the revelation, Amanda woke up on Monday knowing that her life as a cleaner would end in 6 days. For 5 months and 3 weeks, she had meticulously built the strongest case of her career, not just as a consultant, but as someone who believed that justice was still possible in the corporate world. Her real penthouse on Central Park West was unrecognizable. The living room had been transformed into a military operations headquarters. 3 computers were running simultaneously, one analyzing the stolen financial documents, another processing the audio recordings, the third organizing the photographic evidence in chronological order. Michael Jones arrived at 7 p.m., as they had agreed. Even after 10 years of friendship, he was still impressed by Amanda's analytical ability. But when he saw the magnitude of the operation she had planned, he was genuinely shocked. My God, Amanda, this is material to bring down a criminal organization. That's exactly what it is. She pointed to the 4 dossiers organized on the dining table. Brian Serrano, diversion of $847,000 in 8 months. I documented 23 transfers to personal accounts, expenses at luxury restaurants, a trip to Miami with his girlfriend using a corporate card. Michael opened Brian's dossier. The evidence was organized with surgical precision. Photographed bank statements, invoices, hotel records, even photos of him wearing a $45,000 Rolex watch, a value incompatible with his official salary. Marcia Phillips, Amanda continued, falsification of accounting documents to hide real losses of $1.2 million. I have the original documents and the altered versions. A handwriting analysis will confirm that she made the alterations. Marcia's dossier was even more impressive. Amanda had managed to photograph documents before and after the alterations, creating a complete history of the forgeries. Edward Clark, formation of a cartel with suppliers, receipt of commissions totaling $234,000. I have recordings of the negotiations. She showed a small digital recorder. Deposit receipts in an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. How on earth did you get that? He made the calls from the conference room while I was cleaning. Apparently cleaners don't have ears. Amanda smiled coldly. And Richard Baker, systematic nepotism, leaking of confidential information, harassment of honest employees. He's the most dangerous because he knows how to manipulate the labor system. Michael studied the dossiers for 2 hours. When he finished, he was pale. Amanda, this is material for a pre-trial detention. It's not just a dismissal for cause, it's a serious criminal case. That's exactly what I want. She stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the city. But Michael, there's something else. I want the operation to be televised. How so? I want them to be publicly humiliated, in the same way they humiliated dozens of employees. I want all of New York to see their faces when they're arrested. Michael shook his head. Amanda, you're talking about revenge, not justice. She turned around, and Michael saw something in his friend's eyes that he had never seen before, a cold, calculated fury. Michael, Do you know how many people lost their jobs because they questioned these criminals? Do you know how many families went through hardship because they siphoned money from their salaries? Do you know how many dreams were destroyed because they treated competent employees like trash? I know, but Christina works 12 hours a day for minimum wage. Julia is an accountant, she has 2 specializations, and she earns less than Richard's nephew, who was hired as an analyst without ever having worked in his life. Carlos was fired after 15 years with the company because he created a campaign that was better than Edward's godsons. Amanda sat down again, but now her voice was serene, controlled. It's not revenge, Michael. It's justice, and justice sometimes needs to be public to be effective. And how do you plan to do that without compromising the process? Amanda smiled, the same smile she had used when she accepted John Serrano's proposal. On Friday at 9 a.m., they'll all be in the conference room discussing the Petrolina contract. I'll enter as a cleaner, for the last time, but this time, I won't leave through the back door. And then, Michael, they'll discover that the cleaner they humiliated for the last 6 months is the new owner of the company, and that she has enough evidence to send all of them to jail. Michael was silent for a long time. Amanda, are you sure you want to do this? Once you pull the trigger, there's no going back. She looked out the window, watching the city lights stretch to the horizon. Michael, 6 months ago, I could have bought this company and simply fired these criminals. It would have been easier, faster, more civilized. She paused. But then I would never have seen Christina crying in the restroom because she can't finish college. I would never have seen Julia reprimanded for doing her job correctly. I would never have seen Carlos fired in front of the children who came to visit him at work. Amanda turned to her friend. Friday isn't about humiliating 4 executives, Michael. It's about restoring dignity to 95 employees who were treated like trash. It's about proving that competence and character still matter more than status and last names. Michael sighed, closing the dossiers. All right, but we'll do it right. When they fall, they'll fall never to get up again. Thursday. One day before Amanda woke up before the alarm went off, it was 5:30 a.m., and for the first time in almost 6 months, she didn't feel the weight of the performance she would have to maintain during the day. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow would be the end. She took a long, relaxing shower in her penthouse, something she hadn't done in a long time, as she kept the rented room in Queens to preserve the facade. Looking at herself in the mirror, she saw 2 different people, the confident and determined Amanda, the businesswoman, and the hunched and invisible Amanda, the cleaner. Tomorrow, the 2 would meet. The phone rang at 6:15. John Serrano. Amanda, how are you feeling? Ready. There was no nervousness in her voice. Mr. John, are you sure you want to be present at the meeting? Absolutely. It's my company, my son, my responsibility. I want to look him in the eye when he finds out who you are. And how will you explain your presence? I'll say I want to discuss the Petrolina contract, that I'm worried about the company's future. John paused. Actually, it won't be a lie. I'm really worried that my son will never be able to look at himself in the mirror again without feeling ashamed. At 7 Hags, Amanda put on the cleaner's uniform for the last time, but this time she sewed a small digital recorder that Michael had provided into the pocket of the blouse. Everything said in the meeting would be recorded as additional evidence. On the way to work, she stopped at a diner and bought coffee at the same place where she had gotten coffee for the past 180 days. The owner, a man named Joe, knew her as Amanda Jones, the shy cleaner who always paid with coins. Morning, Amanda. The usual, Joe. She smiled. But I think starting tomorrow I'll be getting coffee somewhere else. Are you changing jobs? Something like that. Amanda left a $50 bill on the counter, a much higher value than the price of the coffee. Thanks for always treating me well, Joe. People like you make a difference in the world. The man was confused by the unexpected generosity, but Amanda had already left. At the company, she arrived half an hour earlier than usual. The supervisor was finishing organizing the cleaning materials. Amanda, you look different today. How so? I don't know. More upright. Walking differently. He studied her with curiosity. And your glasses are different too. Amanda smiled. Unconsciously, she had begun to abandon the submissive posture she had maintained for so long. Maybe I just feel more confident. Be careful, kid. Too much confidence in this place can be dangerous. The supervisor lowered his voice. They don't like it when we show personality. I know, but sometimes, sir, we have to stop hiding. During the day, Amanda followed her normal routine, but with a different gaze. She observed every employee, every interaction, trying to record in her memory the faces of the people whose lives she would change the next day. Christina passed her in the hallway and greeted her discreetly, the kind of acknowledgement they had developed over the months. Amanda almost stopped to talk to her, almost revealed what would happen the next day, but she held back. At 3 p.m., she witnessed another episode that confirmed she was doing the right thing. Edward humiliated the marketing intern in front of the entire team because the young man had made a creative suggestion for a campaign. "Interns have opinions now," Edward laughed maliciously. "Stay in your lane, kid. You're here to make coffee and learn, not to think." The young man, who couldn't have been more than 22, bowed his head, red with shame. Amanda saw the tears he tried to hide from his colleagues. "Tomorrow," she thought, "you'll find out that thought and creativity don't have a college degree or a job title." At 5:30 p.m., she finished her last cleaning of the main conference room. Tomorrow, she would enter that room as the owner. She ran her hand over the mahogany table, remembering the first humiliation she had suffered there. In less than 15 hours, the table would be hers. Before she left, Amanda called Michael. "Everything confirmed for tomorrow. Everything. The documentation is ready. The officers are on standby. The journalists from CNN have been notified of a special operation in the business district at 10:01 a.m. and the criminal proceedings. They've already been filed and are just waiting for your signature as the company owner and main victim. Amanda, are you absolutely sure?" "I am." She looked one last time at the building where she had been humiliated for 180 days. "Michael, thanks for believing in me. Amanda, I've known you for 10 years. I've never seen you do anything that wasn't fair, even when it hurt. If you say these guys deserve what's coming to them, I believe you." Amanda hung up and walked to her car, the Honda Civic she had parked every day in the most distant spot from the building, so as not to arouse suspicion. Tomorrow she would park in the executive spot. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stayed on the penthouse balcony, looking at the New York lights, thinking about all the people who had been wronged, all the dreams that had been destroyed by arrogance and prejudice. At 4 a.m., she finally fell asleep, and she dreamed of Christina's smile when she found out that the cleaner who comforted her in the restroom was, in reality, the new CEO of the company. Chapter 4. Friday, 8:45 a.m. Amanda parked the Honda Civic in the same distant spot she had used for the past 6 months, but this time there was a crucial difference. In the passenger seat folder were the documents proving her ownership of the company, documents signed by John Serrano and notarized the day before. She looked in the rearview mirror one last time. The Amanda Jones cleaner looked back at her. In 15 minutes, that person would cease to exist forever. At 8:50 a.m., Amanda entered the building wearing the grey uniform for the last time. The security guard at the entrance barely looked up, as usual. In the elevator, she met 2 executives from another company who were talking about a big deal they would close that day. They talked over her head as if she didn't exist. If they only knew, Amanda thought, that they're talking in front of the businesswoman who just bought one of the biggest consulting firms in the city. On the 15th floor, the supervisor was organizing the materials. "Morning, Amanda. You look radiant today." "Morning, sir." She smiled genuinely. "It's a special day." "Special how?" "You'll find out soon. And, sir, thank you for everything. For always treating me with respect and dignity." The man was confused by the farewell tone, but Amanda had already taken her cleaning cart and was walking toward the conference room. At 8:55 a.m., she stopped in front of the door where she had been humiliated for the first time. She took a deep breath and knocked softly. "Come in," Brian's harsh voice echoed from inside. Amanda opened the door and pushed the cart in. Brian, Marcia, Edward, and Richard were sitting around the mahogany table, with documents scattered on the surface. There was also a 5th person, John Serrano, who greeted her with an imperceptible nod. "Good morning," Amanda murmured, keeping her voice low and submissive for the last time. "What good morning?" Brian didn't even look up. "You're late, and you shouldn't be here now. We're in an important meeting." "I'm sorry, sir. I'll just clean up quickly and leave." Edward sighed exaggeratedly. "Same thing every Friday. Can't they organize the cleaning schedule?" "Leave her," Richard said with disdain. "She's just another one who doesn't understand how the world works. Let her do her little job and leave." Amanda began to clean a side table, strategically positioning herself to hear the entire conversation. Brian was explaining the details of the Petrolina contract, a contract Amanda knew was being inflated by 40%. "Dad," Brian turned to John, "you can rest easy. This contract will save the company. 12 million in 6 months. And are you sure you can deliver the service? John asked, discreetly looking at Amanda. Of course we can, Marcia laughed. We have the best team in New York. Our staff is highly qualified. Amanda almost choked. The highly qualified team included 2 of Richard's nephews with no experience and Marcia's son, who had failed his college entrance exams 3 times. And the costs, John insisted. 12 million seems like a lot for a project like this. Edward leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Between us, there are some special gratuities included in the budget. You know. John understood. It was the final confirmation that his son was involved in a kickback scheme. Amanda continued cleaning, but her heart was beating faster and faster. At 9:05 a.m. she stopped and walked slowly to the center of the room. "Excuse me," she said, still keeping her voice low. "What do you want now?" Brian looked at her with irritation. Amanda took off her fake glasses and straightened her posture. For the first time in 6 months, she looked Brian Serrano directly in the eyes. "I said, excuse me." Something in her voice made everyone stop talking. The tone was no longer submissive. It was firm, confident, authoritative. Edward frowned. "What the hell?" Amanda walked to the head of the table, where Brian was sitting. "Get up." "What did you say?" Brian stood up abruptly, red with anger. "Have you gone crazy? Who do you think you are to—" "I am Amanda Jones." Her voice echoed through the room like thunder. "And I'm the new owner of this company." The silence that followed was deafening. Brian looked at her as if he had seen a ghost. Marcia dropped the papers from her hands. Edward and Richard looked at each other in confusion. "Dad," Brian turned to John. "What is she talking about?" John Serrano stood up slowly, with a sad smile on his lips. "Brian, I sold the company to her 6 months ago. She has a degree in business administration, an MBA, and she's one of the most respected business consultants in America." "This is impossible." Marcia stood up, pointing at Amanda. "She's a cleaner. A what, Marcia?" Amanda walked toward her. "Someone without the intelligence to understand million-dollar numbers. Someone who lives in a bubble separate from reality. Is that what you said last Monday?" Marcia turned pale. Amanda turned to Edward. "And you, Edward. You said people like me work with mops while people like you work with million-dollar contracts. Interesting, considering I just heard you confess that you include kickbacks in the budgets." Edward tried to speak, but no sound came out of his mouth. "And you, Richard," Amanda approached the Human Resources Director. "You said I probably couldn't even add correctly, that I'd only finished, what was it, high school?" She smiled coldly. "For your information, I have 2 college degrees. I speak 3 languages and I have saved 17 companies from bankruptcy." Richard was visibly sweating. Finally, Amanda turned to Brian. "And you, Brian Serrano, you said I was walking, cleaning furniture, that people like me have no intellectual capacity, that everyone should stay in their place." Brian tried to regain his composure. "Listen, I don't know what this scam is, but—" "A scam?" Amanda laughed, a sound none of them had ever heard. "The scam, Brian, was what you and your friends ran in this company for the past 3 years. But now it's over." She walked to the door and opened it. Outside, Michael Jones was waiting with 2 police officers and a television camera crew. "Gentlemen," Amanda announced, "allow me to introduce the new former executives of Santos and Associates. They have some documents to sign and some explanations to give to the police." The entrance of Michael Jones into the conference room completely changed the atmosphere. The lawyer walked with the confidence of someone who had spent the last few days meticulously preparing the downfall of 4 people. "Good morning," Michael greeted formally. "I am Dr. Michael Jones, legal representative for Ms. Amanda Jones, the owner of this company." He opened his leather briefcase. "Here I have 4 notices of dismissal for cause." Brian finally managed to find his voice. "This is ridiculous. I'm the CEO of this company." "You were," Amanda corrected calmly. "For 6 months, Brian, you worked for me. For 6 months, you committed crimes in my company. For 6 months, you humiliated my employees." "What crimes? What are you talking about?" Amanda gestured to Michael, who opened 4 dossiers on the conference table. "Brian Serrano," Michael began in a solemn voice, "you are being dismissed for cause for the following reasons. Embezzlement of $847,000 from the company, as documented in 23 transfers to personal accounts." He showed bank statements with red circles, highlighting the transfers. "Improper use of the corporate card for personal expenses totaling $234,000, including dinners at the New York Athletic Club, a spa in Miami, and the purchase of a $45,000 Rolex watch." Brian tried to deny it, but his voice came out as a choked whisper. Michael turned to Marcia. "Marcia Phillips, you are being dismissed for falsification of accounting documents." He spread photographs of financial reports on the table. "Here we have the original documents, photographed before the alterations, and here are the falsified versions you presented to management. A handwriting analysis will confirm your authorship." Marcia fell into the chair, her hands trembling. "Edward Clark," Michael continued relentlessly. "Formation of a cartel with suppliers and receipt of kickbacks. We have recordings of your negotiations." He showed a small digital recorder. "Deposit receipts in an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, and inflated contracts where your illegal commission was disguised as special consulting." Edward put his hands to his head, moaning softly. "And Richard Baker," Michael concluded. "Systematic nepotism, leaking of confidential information, and harassment of honest employees. We documented 15 cases of hiring unqualified relatives, paying higher salaries than to competent employees, and using privileged information to intimidate employees who questioned irregularities." The silence in the room was only broken by the sound of the CNN camera recording everything. Amanda walked to the window, looking at the city. "Do you know what the biggest crime you committed was?" No one answered. "It wasn't the $1.3 million you stole from the company. It wasn't the fraudulent contracts or the incompetent relatives you hired." She turned to look at them. "It was the way you treated people. Christina works 12 hours a day for minimum wage, while Richard's nephew, who can't even turn on a computer, earns $8,000. Julia has 2 specializations in accounting and earns less than Marcia's son, who failed his college entrance exams 3 times. Brian tried one last move. You can't do this. I'll sue. You'll what, Brian?" Amanda laughed. "Sue me for what? For working honestly for 6 months? For discovering your crimes? For saving the company your father built?" John Serrano, who had remained silent throughout the exposure, finally spoke. "Brian, you had 3 years to prove you deserved my trust. 3 years to honor everything I built." His voice was heavy with pain. "Instead, you turned our company into a criminal organization." "Dad, No," John raised his hand. "I put my entire life in your hands, and you threw it away." Amanda saved not only the company, but the dignity of our name. Michael distributed the official notices. "You have 1 hour to remove your personal belongings from the offices, under the supervision of security. Your access cards will be cancelled immediately. The company's bank accounts have been frozen for an audit." "And the criminal proceedings?" Richard asked with a broken voice. "They have already been filed with the NYPD." Michael closed his briefcase. "The prosecutor is analyzing the case for possible pre-trial detention." Amanda returned to the center of the room. "But there's something Michael hasn't mentioned yet." "What?" Marcia murmured. "I recorded everything." Amanda showed the small device sewn into her uniform. "Every humiliation, every contempt, every time you treated me as if I were invisible. It's all recorded and will be used as evidence of systematic workplace harassment." Edward tried to defend himself. "But we didn't know you were—" "Exactly." Amanda slammed her hand on the table. "You didn't know I was a businesswoman, so you thought you could treat me like trash. Do you think people who work in cleaning deserve less respect? That employees with lower salaries are less human?" No one answered. "Your problem is not that you disrespected me without knowing who I was. The problem is that you disrespected someone you thought had no power to defend herself." Amanda walked to the door. "The meeting is over, gentlemen. You have 1 hour." As she left, she heard Brian begging his father, "Dad, please, we can talk." John's response echoed down the hallway. "We've already talked, Brian. For 3 years you showed me exactly who you are." At 10:15 a.m., Amanda called the 95 employees of the company to a meeting in the main auditorium. The news that the 4 directors had been fired had already spread through the building like a wildfire, and the atmosphere was electrified with speculation. Amanda entered the auditorium still wearing the cleaner's uniform, but now walking upright, with the confident posture of a CEO. The murmur ceased instantly when they saw her. Christina, sitting in the 3rd row, her eyes wide. "Oh my God, Amanda! Good morning, everyone." Amanda's voice resonated through the auditorium without the need for a microphone. "My name is Amanda Jones, and I am the new owner of this company." The silence was absolute. 95 pairs of eyes looked at her with a mixture of shock, confusion, and disbelief. "For the past 6 months, I've worked as a cleaner in this building. Some of you know me as Amanda Jones." She smiled at Christina. "Others barely notice my existence, and that's okay. I plan to be invisible." Julia from accounting slowly stood up. Are you really the new owner?" I am. Amanda walked to the center of the auditorium. I bought this company from Mr. John Serrano 6 months ago with one goal, to find out why a traditional and respected company was going bankrupt. Lucas, from the finance department, raised his hand. And what did you find out? I found out that it wasn't the numbers that were wrong, Lucas. It was the people who were manipulating the numbers. Amanda looked at him directly. Do you remember when you refused to falsify financial reports for Marcia? When she threatened to fire you for insubordination? Lucas nodded, surprised that she knew about the episode. You did the right thing. And for that, when you leave this meeting, you'll find a new sign on your door. Lucas Miller, CFO. The auditorium erupted in murmurs. Lucas turned pale with shock. Christina, Amanda turned to the former secretary, do you remember our conversations in the restroom? When you told me about your dreams of finishing college? Christina nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Starting Monday, you will be the administrative director, and the company will pay for your business studies, with the commitment that you will use that knowledge to help other employees grow professionally. Now Christina was crying openly. Amanda continued walking through the auditorium. Julia, 2 specializations in accounting and 12 years of experience. Why were you earning an intern's salary while incompetent relatives were earning directors' salaries? Because Richard said I didn't have a leadership profile, Julia replied timidly. Leadership profile, Amanda laughed. Julia, you alone identified 23 accounting irregularities in the past 6 months. You tried to alert the directors about the frauds they were committing. If that's not leadership, I don't know what is. She paused. On Monday, you'll take over as accounting manager, with a 60% higher salary. The auditorium was in complete silence, except for the emotional sobs of some employees. Patrick, from the commercial department, Amanda turned to a young man in the second row. You managed to retain 3 major clients who wanted to cancel contracts due to previous mismanagement. You managed to do it by being honest with them, showing that the problems would be solved. You are the new commercial director. Amanda returned to the center of the auditorium. But I didn't come here just to give out promotions. I came to apologize. Apologize for what? Someone shouted from the back. For having let you suffer for 6 months while I collected evidence. Her voice became emotional. For having seen Carlos unfairly fired and not having acted immediately. For having seen so many of you humiliated and having remained silent. The supervisor, who had run in when he heard about the meeting, was standing at the door with his mouth open. Sir, Amanda called to him, you once said that too much confidence in this place could be dangerous. You were right, it was dangerous for those who abused power. She turned to all the employees. Starting today, some things are going to change in this company. First, all of you will get a 25% raise retroactive for the last 6 months. Second, we will implement a premium health plan for employees and their dependents. Third, a scholarship program for employees' children. Fourth, profit sharing will be distributed equitably to everyone. The auditorium erupted in applause. But the most important change, Amanda raised her voice to be heard over the applause, is that this company will be based on respect and dignity. It doesn't matter if you're a director or a cleaner, if you have a college degree or a high school diploma. Every person who works here will be treated with the dignity they deserve. Carlos, the designer who had been fired, appeared at the auditorium door. Amanda had called him the day before, offering him his job back with a promotion. Carlos, she called to him, do you accept to be our creativity director? I accept, he shouted, and the auditorium erupted in applause again. Amanda waited for silence to return. One last thing. This company will be called Jones & Associates, and the associates are all of you, because a company is not a building or a name. A company is the people who work in it, who believe in it, who grow with it. Christina stood up, still crying. Amanda, why did you do this? Why did you humiliate yourself for 6 months to help us? Amanda smiled, the same smile she had used when she accepted John Serrano's proposal. Because, Christina, my grandmother taught me that the true measure of a person is not how they treat those who have the power to help them, but how they treat those who have no power to harm them. The former directors failed that test. You all passed with flying colors. The auditorium rose to their feet in applause that lasted 5 minutes. Amanda looked at all those faces, some crying with emotion, others laughing with relief, all transformed by the hope of a better future. Her mission had been accomplished. 1 week later, the office of Jones & Associates was unrecognizable. Amanda had transformed the old executive suite into an open and democratic space where she worked side by side with the other employees. The glass partitions that separated the important from the common had been removed. Michael Jones arrived at 2 p.m. with updates on the criminal proceedings. Amanda, you'll like to hear this. Tell me they confessed. Better than that. The IRS has opened an investigation into all four. The district attorney is considering a broader operation because they found connections to other companies in the sector. Michael sat down. Brian tried to claim the diversions were loans he intended to repay. The problem is, we have recordings of him in the Miami spa telling his girlfriend that Dad would never find out. Amanda shook her head. And the others. Marcia has hired a lawyer who is trying to negotiate a plea deal. Edward fled the country. We alerted Interpol. Richard is running a smear campaign against you on social media, but he's just digging his own grave. A campaign how? Saying you're a despotic businesswoman who illegally infiltrated the company. The problem is all of New York has already seen the CNN report. You've become a popular hero. It was true. The case had national repercussions. Amanda had received invitations to give lectures in Chicago, Los Angeles, and even an invitation from a publisher to write a book about the experience. Michael, something is bothering me. What? What if I'm wrong? What if the public exposure is excessive? What if... Michael interrupted her. Amanda, did you see the report that ABC did yesterday? I didn't have time. They interviewed former employees of the company. They found out that in the last 3 years, 47 people resigned due to the toxic environment. 2 developed depression. 1 attempted suicide. Michael leaned forward. You didn't destroy 4 careers, Amanda. You saved dozens of lives. Christina knocked on the door. Amanda, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's someone here who wants to talk to you. Who? The marketing intern Edward humiliated last week. Matthew. Amanda gestured for him to come in. Matthew appeared at the door, visibly nervous. Hi, Miss Jones. I wanted to thank you. For what, Matthew? For what you did. I know you saw me when Edward humiliated me in front of everyone. The young man took a deep breath. That day I went home thinking about quitting my career. I thought maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Amanda felt her heart ache. Matthew. But now, seeing what happened, understanding that the problem wasn't with me, he smiled shyly. I brought some ideas for campaigns. Carlos said he'd like to see them. Matthew showed her a folder with creative sketches. Amanda analyzed them and was impressed with the quality of the ideas. Matthew, this is excellent. Creative, innovative, commercially viable. She looked him in the eyes. You have genuine talent. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. After Matthew left, Amanda was thoughtful. Michael, do you think people have learned anything from all this? How so? If another Brian Serrano appears in another company tomorrow, treating employees like trash, will anyone have the courage to report him? Or did it only work with me because I had the resources to buy the company? Michael was silent for a moment. Amanda, you know that real social changes don't happen overnight, but you planted a seed. You showed that it is possible to resist, that it is possible to win. But what about those who don't have my background, my resources? Ah, Michael smiled. About that, you'll be happy to know that the New York Bar Association is creating a free legal assistance program for employees who suffer workplace harassment. Guess who will be the program's lead consultant? Amanda smiled. Really? Really? And there's more. Columbia University wants to create a chair in business ethics and workplace dignity. Guess who the professor will be? At that moment, Amanda understood that her mission was just beginning. Serrano and Associates had been the first domain to fall, but there were dozens of other empires built on humiliation and disrespect. Her phone rang. It was John Serrano. Amanda, how's everything going? Good, Mr. John. And how are you dealing with all this? Better than I imagined. You know why? He paused. Because for the first time in years I can walk down the street without feeling ashamed of the Serrano name. You cleared our reputation along with the company. And Brian? Brian is finding out what it's like to work honestly. He got a job as a salesman at a dealership. According to my ex-wife, he's learning to treat customers well because he now needs the commission to pay his bills. Amanda smiled. Maybe there was hope for Brian too. Mr. John, thanks for trusting me. Amanda, thank you for giving me back the dignity of being a father. 3 months later, Jones & Associates was having its best financial moment in 5 years. Revenue had tripled, new clients were arriving attracted by the company's reputation, and most importantly, 0 employees had resigned since the change in management. Amanda arrived early that Monday and found a situation that would test everything she had built. Christina was waiting for her in the office, visibly distressed. "Amanda, we have a problem." "What happened?" "A resume arrived yesterday afternoon. The person wants to talk to you personally." "And what's the problem?" Christina hesitated. "It's Edward Clark. He's back from abroad and wants a chance to work here." Amanda was silent for a long time. "Is he here?" "He's in the reception. He says he won't leave until he talks to you." Amanda took a deep breath. It was the test she feared and expected at the same time. How would she react to meeting one of the men who had humiliated her face to face? "Let him in." Christina looked at her in surprise. "Are you sure?" "I am." 5 minutes later, Edward Clark entered the office. He was unrecognizable, a cheap suit, badly cut hair, a hunched posture that Amanda knew well, the posture of someone who had been humiliated by life. "Amanda," he said in a low voice, "thank you for seeing me. Sit down." Amanda kept her voice neutral. Edward sat on the edge of the chair like an employee about to be fired. I know I have no right to be here. I know I don't deserve your attention, but I need to talk. Talk. I lost everything. The company I tried to start abroad went bankrupt. No one in New York wants to hire me. My wife left me. I'm living with my elderly mother." He bowed his head. "And you know what the worst part is? It's that I deserve it all." Amanda studied him in silence. "When I saw the CNN report, when I understood what you had done, I thought a lot. For 3 months abroad, all I did was think." Edward looked up. "I remembered every employee I humiliated, every person I treated like trash, every time I thought being a director gave me the right to be inhuman. And I was ashamed, deeply." He took a deep breath. "Amanda, I didn't come here to ask for a job. I came to ask for forgiveness." The silence stretched for long minutes. "Edward, do you remember what you said when you first kicked me out of the conference room?" "I remember. I said everyone should stay in their place." "And where is my place, Edward?" He looked her in the eyes for the first time. "Your place is where you've always been, at the top, not because of a position or title, but because of your character." "I was the one who was in the wrong place." Amanda stood up and walked to the window. "Edward, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone. Do you know what the most difficult moment of the 6 months I spent as a cleaner was?" "What?" "It wasn't when you humiliated me. It was when I saw you humiliating Matthew." She turned around. "Because at that moment, I saw that you were repeating the same cycle with me that I could repeat with you. Revenge is tempting, Edward, but it builds nothing." Edward bowed his head again. "Here's my proposal," Amanda continued. "You're not going to work here, but you're going to work for me." "How so?" "I'm creating a professional rehabilitation program for executives who abused power. You would be the first test case." Amanda sat down again. 6 months working as a volunteer at social organizations, helping unemployed people find work, learning what dignity means. "And after that?" "After that, if you prove that you have really changed, I will personally write a letter of recommendation for any company you want." Edward was silent, processing the proposal. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because, Edward, the goal was never to destroy you. It was to teach you that people are people, regardless of the position they hold." Amanda smiled. "And because I believe everyone deserves a second chance, but only after they earn it." Edward stood up. "I accept. When do I start?" "Tomorrow. Christina has the program details." When Edward left, Christina entered the office. "Amanda, are you sure about what you're doing?" "No. But that's what differentiates a good company from an extraordinary one, Christina. Good companies punish mistakes. Extraordinary ones transform the people who made them." Christina smiled. "And what if it doesn't work?" "Then I'll have learned something important about forgiveness and second chances. But if it does work, if it works, maybe we can change not just one company, but an entire business culture." That day, Amanda understood that her greatest victory had not been destroying 4 corrupt executives. It had been creating the possibility for them to become better people. Thursday, 6 months later, Assembly of the New York Business Federation. The auditorium of the New York Business Federation was full. 800 New York business owners had gathered to listen to Amanda Jones present her lecture, True Leadership, How Respect Transforms Organizations. Amanda looked from the side of the stage at the audience and saw faces that represented the economic power of the region. CEOs of large groups, directors of multinationals, traditional entrepreneurs. Many of them had built their empires using the same methods as Brian, Marcia, Edward, and Richard. The presenter called her to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, Amanda Jones." She walked to the podium to polite applause. She wore a smart but not ostentatious suit. Her posture was confident but not arrogant. Everything about her conveyed an authority earned, not imposed. "Good evening. Before I begin, I want to ask a question. How many of you know the name of the person who cleans your office?" The silence was awkward. Some executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Don't worry, I didn't know either. That's why I decided to find out." Amanda smiled. "My name is Amanda Jones, and for 6 months I worked as a cleaner at the company I now lead." A murmur ran through the auditorium like a wave. Some of you might think, what a clever marketing strategy. Others, what a well-executed publicity stunt. But it wasn't a strategy or a stunt. It was a necessity. She walked in front of the podium, approaching the audience. The necessity of understanding why companies with good products, good numbers, and good opportunities are failing, why competent professionals are resigning, why the American corporate environment is getting sick. Dr. Robert Smith, the president of the Federation, nodded for her to continue. "For 6 months I was treated like furniture, ignored, humiliated, despised, not for being a cleaner, but for being considered irrelevant." Amanda paused. "And I found out that when you become irrelevant to people, they show who they really are." In the third row, a well-known executive whispered to his colleague, "Where is she going with this?" I discovered executives diverting millions while denying 3% raises to employees, directors hiring incompetent relatives while firing experienced professionals for cost reduction, leaders destroying dreams and careers out of pure sadism. The auditorium was in complete silence. But I also discovered something more important. I discovered Christina's, Julius, Lucas, Carlos, extraordinary people who kept the companies running despite the incompetence of the leadership, people who were treated as invisible, but who were in reality the invisible pillars of success. Amanda returned to the podium and opened her laptop. "I want to show you some numbers from Jones & Associates in the past 6 months. On the screen, impressive graphics appeared. Productivity, a 340% increase, revenue 280% growth, staff turnover, a 95% reduction, customer satisfaction from 62% to 98%. Applause began to resonate in the auditorium. "And do you know how we achieved these numbers? By treating all people with the same respect you would like to receive, by recognizing competence regardless of position, by promoting based on merit, not connections." Dr. Robert Smith stood up. "Amanda, all this is very inspiring, but let's be practical. Not all business owners have the resources to do an infiltration like you did." "You're right, Dr. Smith, that's why I created this." Amanda showed the logo of a new project on the screen. Institute for Workplace Dignity, a free program that helps companies identify and correct leadership problems before they turn into crises. How does it work? Simple. Employees can anonymously report leadership problems through an app. Specialized consultants conduct an evaluation of the company. And we offer free training for executives who want to learn to lead with respect. An executive in the back of the auditorium raised his hand. "And what if the leaders don't want to change?" Amanda smiled, the same smile she used when she accepted John Serrano's proposal. "Then they will discover what Brian Serrano discovered, that competent and respected employees are more loyal, more productive, and more profitable than humiliated and undervalued employees." "And where is Brian today?" someone shouted. "Brian is working as a salesman at a dealership. For the first time in his life, he needs to treat people well to earn a living. And you know what? According to his mother, he's never been happier." The auditorium erupted in applause. "Business owners," Amanda raised her voice, "you have a choice. You can continue to build empires based on fear and humiliation, or you can build organizations based on respect and dignity." She paused, looking directly at the audience. "The first option may work in the short term, but the second builds legacies that last for generations." Amanda walked to the edge of the stage. "And if you're still not convinced, remember, today I am the businesswoman on stage receiving applause. But tomorrow any of you may discover that your cleaner, your doorman or your intern has the competence and resources to completely change your lives." The silence that followed was different from all the others. It wasn't discomfort or surprise. It was reflection. Then slowly one person stood up and began to applaud. Soon another joined. In a few seconds, all 800 business owners were standing, applauding not only Amanda, but the transformation she represented. She had done it. She had not only saved a company or destroyed 4 corrupt careers, she had planted the seed of a cultural change that could transform the business environment of an entire region. In the front row, John Serrano was applauding with tears in his eyes. Beside him, Christina, Julia, Lucas, and Carlos, all promoted, all transformed, all living proof that respect generates extraordinary results. Amanda smiled and waved to the audience. Her mission was complete, but her journey was just beginning. 1 year later, Jones & Associates was having its best financial moment in 5 years. Revenues had tripled, new clients were arriving attracted by the company's reputation, and most importantly, 0 employees had resigned since the change in management. Amanda arrived early that Monday and found a situation that would test everything she had built. Christina was waiting for her in the office, visibly distressed. "Amanda, we have a problem." "What happened?" "A resume arrived yesterday afternoon. The person wants to talk to you personally." "And what's the problem?" Christina hesitated. "It's Edward Clark. He's back from abroad and wants a chance to work here." Amanda was silent for a long time. "Is he here?" "He's in the reception. He says he won't leave until he talks to you." Amanda took a deep breath. It was the test she feared and expected at the same time. How would she react to meeting one of the men who had humiliated her face to face? "Let him in." Christina looked at her in surprise. "Are you sure?" "I am." 5 minutes later, Edward Clark entered the office. He was unrecognizable, a cheap suit, badly cut hair, a hunched posture that Amanda knew well, the posture of someone who had been humiliated by life. "Amanda," he said in a low voice, "thank you for seeing me." "Sit down." Amanda kept her voice neutral. Edward sat on the edge of the chair like an employee about to be fired. I know I have no right to be here. I know I don't deserve your attention, but I need to talk." "Talk." "I lost everything. The company I tried to start abroad went bankrupt. No one in New York wants to hire me. My wife left me. I'm living with my elderly mother." He bowed his head. "And you know what the worst part is? It's that I deserve it all." Amanda studied him in silence. "Edward, do you remember what you said when you first kicked me out of the conference room?" "I remember. I said everyone should stay in their place." "And where is my place, Edward?" He looked her in the eyes for the first time. "Your place is where you've always been, at the top, not because of a position or title, but because of your character. I was the one who was in the wrong place." Amanda stood up and walked to the window. "Edward, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone. Do you know what the most difficult moment of the 6 months I spent as a cleaner was?" "What?" "It wasn't when you humiliated me. It was when I saw you humiliating Matthew." She turned around. "Because at that moment, I saw that you were repeating the same cycle with me that I could repeat with you. Revenge is tempting, Edward, but it builds nothing." Edward bowed his head again. "Here's my proposal," Amanda continued. "You're not going to work here, but you're going to work for me." "How so?" "I'm creating a professional rehabilitation program for executives who abused power. You would be the first test case." Amanda sat down again. 6 months working as a volunteer at social organizations, helping unemployed people find work, learning what dignity means. "And after that?" "After that, if you prove that you have really changed, I will personally write a letter of recommendation for any company you want." Edward was silent, processing the proposal. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because, Edward, the goal was never to destroy you. It was to teach you that people are people, regardless of the position they hold." Amanda smiled. "And because I believe everyone deserves a second chance, but only after they earn it." Edward stood up. "I accept. When do I start?" "Tomorrow. Christina has the program details." When Edward left, Christina entered the office. "Amanda, are you sure about what you're doing?" "No. But that's what differentiates a good company from an extraordinary one, Christina. Good companies punish mistakes. Extraordinary ones transform the people who made them." Christina smiled. "And what if it doesn't work?" "Then I'll have learned something important about forgiveness and second chances. But if it does work, if it works, maybe we can change not just one company, but an entire business culture." That day, Amanda understood that her greatest victory had not been destroying 4 corrupt executives. It had been creating the possibility for them to become better people. Thursday, 6 months later, Assembly of the New York Business Federation. The auditorium of the New York Business Federation was full. 800 New York business owners had gathered to listen to Amanda Jones present her lecture, True Leadership, How Respect Transforms Organizations. Amanda looked from the side of the stage at the audience and saw faces that represented the economic power of the region. CEOs of large groups, directors of multinationals, traditional entrepreneurs. Many of them had built their empires using the same methods as Brian, Marsha, Edward, and Richard. The presenter called her to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, Amanda Jones." She walked to the podium to polite applause. She wore a smart but not ostentatious suit. Her posture was confident but not arrogant. Everything about her conveyed an authority earned, not imposed. "Good evening. Before I begin, I want to ask a question. How many of you know the name of the person who cleans your office?" The silence was awkward. Some executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Don't worry, I didn't know either. That's why I decided to find out." Amanda smiled. "My name is Amanda Jones, and for 6 months I worked as a cleaner at the company I now lead." A murmur ran through the auditorium like a wave. Some of you might think, what a clever marketing strategy. Others, what a well-executed publicity stunt. But it wasn't a strategy or a stunt. It was a necessity. She walked in front of the podium, approaching the audience. The necessity of understanding why companies with good products, good numbers, and good opportunities are failing, why competent professionals are resigning, why the American corporate environment is getting sick. Dr. Robert Smith, the president of the Federation, nodded for her to continue. "For 6 months I was treated like furniture, ignored, humiliated, despised, not for being a cleaner, but for being considered irrelevant." Amanda paused. "And I found out that when you become irrelevant to people, they show who they really are." In the third row, a well-known executive whispered to his colleague, "Where is she going with this?" I discovered executives diverting millions while denying 3% raises to employees, directors hiring incompetent relatives while firing experienced professionals for cost reduction, leaders destroying dreams and careers out of pure sadism. The auditorium was in complete silence. But I also discovered something more important. I discovered Christina's, Julius, Lucas, Carlos, extraordinary people who kept the companies running despite the incompetence of the leadership, people who were treated as invisible, but who were in reality the invisible pillars of success. Amanda returned to the podium and opened her laptop. "I want to show you some numbers from Jones & Associates in the past 6 months. On the screen, impressive graphics appeared. Productivity, a 340% increase. Revenue, 280% growth. Staff turnover, a 95% reduction. Customer satisfaction, from 62% to 98%. Applause began to resonate in the auditorium. "And do you know how we achieved these numbers? By treating all people with the same respect you would like to receive, by recognizing competence regardless of position, by promoting based on merit, not connections." Dr. Robert Smith stood up. "Amanda, all this is very inspiring, but let's be practical. Not all business owners have the resources to do an infiltration like you did." "You're right, Dr. Smith, that's why I created this." Amanda showed the logo of a new project on the screen. Institute for Workplace Dignity, a free program that helps companies identify and correct leadership problems before they turn into crises. How does it work? Simple. Employees can anonymously report leadership problems through an app. Specialized consultants conduct an evaluation of the company, and we offer free training for executives who want to learn to lead with respect. An executive in the back of the auditorium raised his hand. "And what if the leaders don't want to change?" Amanda smiled, the same smile she used when she accepted John Serrano's proposal. "Then they will discover what Brian Serrano discovered, that competent and respected employees are more loyal, more productive, and more profitable than humiliated and undervalued employees." "And where is Brian today?" someone shouted. "Brian is working as a salesman at a dealership. For the first time in his life, he needs to treat people well to earn a living. And you know what? According to his mother, he's never been happier." The auditorium erupted in applause. "Business owners," Amanda raised her voice, "you have a choice. You can continue to build empires based on fear and humiliation, or you can build organizations based on respect and dignity." She paused, looking directly at the audience. "The first option may work in the short term, but the second builds legacies that last for generations." Amanda walked to the edge of the stage. "And if you're still not convinced, remember, today I am the businesswoman on stage receiving applause. But tomorrow any of you may discover that your cleaner, your doorman or your intern has the competence and resources to completely change your lives." The silence that followed was different from all the others. It wasn't discomfort or surprise. It was reflection. Then slowly one person stood up and began to applaud. Soon another joined. In a few seconds, all 800 business owners were standing, applauding not only Amanda, but the transformation she represented. She had done it. She had not only saved a company or destroyed 4 corrupt careers, She had planted the seed of a cultural change that could transform the business environment of an entire region. In the front row, John Serrano was applauding with tears in his eyes. Beside him, Christina, Julia, Lucas, and Carlos, all promoted, all transformed, all living proof that respect generates extraordinary results. Amanda smiled and waved to the audience. Her mission was complete, but her journey was just beginning. 1 year later, Amanda woke up in her penthouse on Central Park West and went to the terrace to drink coffee. The view of the city was the same as always, but something had changed in New York. In the streets, in the commercial buildings, in the companies, a silent transformation was taking place. Her phone rang. It was Christina. "Amanda, you have to see today's newspaper." "What's wrong?" The Institute for Workplace Dignity was mentioned in the economy section of the New York Times. "They say we are responsible for a silent revolution in the American corporate environment." Amanda smiled. Silent revolution was exactly what she had planned. Over the past year, the Institute had served 247 companies in New York and other cities. The results were impressive. An 89% reduction in reported cases of workplace harassment, a 156% increase in the average productivity of participating companies, and most importantly, 23,000 employees who now worked in dignified and respectful environments. At 9 a.m., Amanda arrived at the Jones & Associates office. The company had moved to a larger building in the business district. The growth had been explosive. 280 employees, offices in Chicago and Los Angeles, and plans to expand to other states. But what made her most proud was not the financial numbers. It was seeing Christina coordinating a management meeting with the same confidence that Amanda had once shown in the Federation Auditorium. It was seeing Lucas presenting financial reports to international investors. It was seeing Carlos creating campaigns that won national awards. "Morning, CEO." Matthew passed down the hallway carrying a folder. The former humiliated intern was now the marketing manager and one of the most creative minds in the company. "Morning, Matthew. How's the ExxonMobil project coming along?" "Closed. They loved our proposal, especially when they found out that our team is made up entirely of professionals who were promoted on merit, not recommendation." Amanda smiled. ExxonMobil had become one of the company's biggest clients, attracted precisely by the reputation for excellence in people management that Jones & Associates had built. At 10 a.m., she had a meeting with Dr. Robert Smith, the president of the Federation. He had called asking for an urgent conversation. "Amanda, I have a proposal for you." "Go on." "The U.S. government wants to implement the Institute for Workplace Dignity model nationwide. It would be a pilot program in 5 states, with the possibility of expanding to the entire country." Amanda was silent, processing the proposal. "They want you to coordinate the project. An initial budget of $50 million or as a team of 200 consultants, the support of all the regional federations." "Robert, it's the opportunity to transform the work environment of millions of Americans." He leaned forward. "Amanda, you started by saving one company. Now you can save a country." Before responding, Amanda asked for a few hours to think about it. She left the meeting and went for a walk downtown. She passed by the building where it had all begun, where she had been humiliated as a cleaner and where she had revealed herself as a CEO. At the entrance, she met the supervisor. "Hey, Amanda." He smiled genuinely. "How's our star doing?" "Good, sir. And you?" "Great. Do you know that I now coordinate the entire cleaning team in the building? And what's more, all the companies here treat us with respect. They say it was because of your story." Amanda felt her heart warm. "Sir, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "If you knew that a decision could improve the lives of millions of people, but it would also mean less time with the people you have already helped, what would you do?" The supervisor thought for a moment. "Amanda, you know what the most important thing you did for us was?" "No. It wasn't promoting us or raising our salaries. It was teaching us that our work has value, that we have value." He smiled. "And now that we know that, we can teach other people. So you no longer have to worry so much about us. We've already learned to fly." Amanda hugged the man who had been her first friend when she was just a cleaner. "Thank you, sir." At the end of the afternoon, she returned to the office and found a letter on her desk. It was from Edward Clark. "Amanda, today I complete 6 months in the rehabilitation program. I have worked at 3 different NGOs, helped 47 unemployed people find jobs, and learned more about leadership in these 6 months than in my entire previous career. Most importantly, I learned to ask for forgiveness. I sought out every employee I humiliated in recent years. Not all of them forgave me, and I understand that, but they all saw that I have changed. I got a job at a small consulting firm. The salary is low, the position is simple, but I have never been so happy working, because now I treat my colleagues as people, not as subordinates. Thank you for giving me a second chance. But above all, thank you for teaching me that leadership is not about power, it's about responsibility. Edward Clark. P.S. Marcia and Richard also completed the program. Brian decided to open a small business of his own. They say he treats the employees like family. Amanda folded the letter and put it in the drawer where she kept her most precious treasures. Photos of the team, letters from transformed employees, and a small cleaner's badge she had worn on her first day of work at Serrano and Associates. She looked out the window of her office, watching New York move on a sunny afternoon. Somewhere, a Patricia was discovering her potential. Somewhere, a Matthew was being encouraged instead of humiliated. Somewhere, a Christina was finding her voice. Amanda smiled and went back to work. She had a country to transform, one person at a time, because she had learned the greatest lesson of all. It doesn't matter what uniform you wear, what position you hold, or what bank account you have. What matters is how you treat the people who can do nothing for you. And when you treat those people with dignity, you discover that they can do everything for you and for the world. 6 months later, Assembly of Columbia University in New York. The auditorium of Columbia University in New York was full. Amanda had been invited to give the closing lecture at the National Business Congress. The topic, the future of leadership in America. But this time she wasn't alone on stage. Beside her, Christina, Lucas, Julia, and Carlos, all now certified consultants for the Institute for Workplace Dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, Amanda began, I want to introduce you to the true experts in organizational transformation, people who lived firsthand what it means to be underestimated and who today lead teams in 5 American states. The audience of 2,000 people, students, professors, business owners, applauded enthusiastically. Christina, Amanda turned to her former secretary, tell them how a person without a leadership profile managed to transform an entire department. Christina approached the microphone with the confidence of someone who had found her voice. When they told me I didn't have a leadership profile, I believed it. I spent years thinking I was incapable. Today I coordinate a team of 47 consultants in 3 states, and do you know what my secret was? I treated every person on my team exactly how I would have liked to be treated. Applause echoed in the auditorium. Lucas was next. They said I was just an accountant who didn't understand business. Today, our company grosses $80 million a year, and I can assure you the numbers are important, but the people behind the numbers are what really make the difference. Julia approached the microphone shyly. I was always afraid to speak in public. I thought I had nothing important to say. Today, after implementing workplace dignity programs in 150 companies, I discovered that everyone has something important to contribute. They just need someone to believe in them. Carlos closed the presentations. I was fired for having ideas. Today, those ideas help companies communicate their values authentically. Creativity has no age, no title, no last name. It just needs space to flourish. Amanda took the microphone back. These 4 professionals represent millions of Americans who are underestimated every day due to prejudice, stereotypes, or simply for holding positions that society considers lesser. She paused, looking directly at the audience. But they also represent the proof that when we give opportunities based on competence, not appearance, when we promote based on character, not connections, when we lead with respect, not with fear, magic happens. A student raised his hand. Amanda, how do we know if we are underestimating someone in our work environment? Ask yourselves, do you know the name of the person who cleans your office? Do you know how long they have been working there? Do you know if they have children, dreams, plans for the future? Amanda smiled. If the answer is no, you are underestimating someone. A businesswoman in the audience asked, but what about when we really find incompetent employees? Not everyone is a diamond in the rough waiting to be polished. Christina took the floor. It's true, not everyone is in the right place, but many times, what seems like incompetence is just a lack of opportunities, training, or recognition. Before you write someone off, ask yourself, did that person receive the necessary tools to succeed? And if it still doesn't work, the businesswoman insisted. Lucas replied, then you make an honest and respectful dismissal, explaining the reasons, offering references for positions where the person can succeed, treating the departure with the same dignity you would like to receive. Amanda regained control. The difference between mediocre leadership and extraordinary leadership is not how they treat the stars, it's how they treat the common people and transform them into stars. A university professor asked the last question. Amanda, after all you've been through, what would be your advice for young people entering the job market? Amanda looked at her 4 colleagues on stage, then at the audience full of young people with dreams. First, never accept being treated as invisible. You have a voice, you have value, you have important contributions to make. Second, when you get to leadership positions, and you will, remember what it's like to be underestimated. Use that memory to create environments where everyone can shine. She made a final pause. And third, believe in the power of dignity. In a world that profits from humiliation, being respectful is a revolutionary act. In a market that promotes based on ego, leading with humility is a competitive advantage. In a society that judges by appearance, recognizing competence where others see invisibility is a superpower. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Later, at the airport, Amanda said goodbye to her team. "Do you realize we are part of something much bigger than us?" she said, as they waited for their flight back to New York. "How so?" Julia asked. 2 years ago, we were just 5 people tired of being underestimated. Today, we are leaders of a movement that has already transformed the lives of more than 50,000 American workers. Carlos smiled. "And it's just the beginning, right? The national project is going to reach millions." "Yes, but it's not about numbers." Amanda looked out the airport window watching the planes take off. "It's about dignity. It's about showing that in a country where there are millions of unemployed people, where millions work in precarious conditions, where workplace harassment is epidemic, it is still possible to build work environments based on respect." Christina took Amanda's hand. "Thank you for everything. For believing in us when no one else did. Thank you for proving that I was right to believe." 6 months later, Amanda received a letter that moved her more than all the awards and recognitions she had received. It was from a young woman named Patricia, 19, who worked as a receptionist at a company in Chicago. "Ms. Amanda, my name is Patricia. I'm 19 and I work as a receptionist. Last week, the directors of the company I work for saw your lecture online and decided to implement the Institute for Dignity program. Today, for the first time in a year of work, my boss asked me my full name. He found out I'm studying engineering at night and offered me an internship in the technical area. I know you don't know me, that I'm just one more among millions, but I wanted you to know that your story reached me. That a girl from the neighborhood, the daughter of a cleaner, now believes she can be an engineer not by luck, but by competence. Thank you for teaching me that we shouldn't accept being invisible. With admiration, Patricia Sanchez, future civil engineer." Amanda folded the letter and put it in the drawer where she kept her most precious treasures: photos of the team, letters from transformed employees, and a small cleaner's badge she had worn on her first day of work at Serrano and Associates. She looked out the window of her office, watching New York move on a sunny afternoon. Somewhere a Patricia was discovering her potential. Somewhere a Matthew was being encouraged instead of humiliated. Somewhere a Christina was finding her voice. Amanda smiled and went back to work. She had a country to transform, one person at a time, because she had learned the greatest lesson of all. It doesn't matter what uniform you wear, what position you hold, or what bank account you have. What matters is how you treat the people who can do nothing for you. And when you treat those people with dignity, you discover that they can do everything for you and for the world.